my last sermon of the year, my last sermon before I go on sabbatical. Got so much to say. a short message. Here's a question: who's been in a nativity play this year at school? Something, a Christmas performance? Yes. Okay, quite a few. Has anybody played a wise man or a king in that? Oh, we've got a few people. Okay, fantastic. If we're familiar with this story, I think we've got a PowerPoint for this, have we? If we've got familiar with this story about wise men seeking Jesus, that story that the children help me tell, then we've got our little Christmas nativity view of it, which isn't always accurate. It's actually bigger and better and even more exciting than a Christmas nativity puts together. And I just want to examine that a little bit this morning. That we've got this idea of three kings turning up with three gifts in a stable. Now the shepherds go off and the kings turn up. And it's actually quite different to that. And so we're gonna seek some wisdom this morning. This is wise men seek Jesus, and then they still do. Real wisdom, the people who seek Jesus. And we're going to try to seek some of the truth of this story this morning. And so we're gonna go through it. And the first thing I want to say is it is an amazing story. It's an amazing story. We know that for a number of reasons. One of the reasons we know that is when Matthew, who's writing the story that we read, he uses this Greek word idou, which we translate as behold. But actually it's, whenever any of the gospel writers say behold, they're really going, hey, look, watch this. This is astonishing. This is amazing. This is incredible. So the moment he says that word, we know, okay, something special. Now Matthew's telling this story years and years and years later. But it's still such an astonishing and amazing story that he can't quite get his head around it. And so he uses that word just to warn us, hey, and what I'm about to tell you is incredible. It's incredible. That the Magi, now we say kings, wise men, they were what were called Magi. They came from probably Persia or somewhere like that. And the best way that I can describe them is the combination of a scientist, a politician, and a religious leader, all rolled into one. They were very significant people. Now, they weren't kings, but they were king makers. If you were a king and you wanted the stamp of approval, you went to the Magi. So they were the power behind many thrones. They were influential people. And they were going to go on a 1,000-mile journey to visit Jesus. Christmas is often a time for journeying, isn't it? We've got some folks who aren't here today. Some of them are poorly. Some of them are because they're visiting their friends. Tracy and Paul have gone to visit their son in Australia. That's more than a 1,000-mile journey, a lot more than a 1,000-mile journey. But they didn't have to go on camels or walk. They'd actually taken a plane. But these Magi would have needed a long time to prepare because they're so important. They would have taken animals with them. They'd have taken servants with them. They'd have taken an army with them. And the rumours were that their soldiers were so powerful, they'd even had encounters with Roman soldiers at various times and defeated them. So we're not talking about 3 men and 3 camels, or occasionally like a church or a school nativity where they've got 5 or 6 kings. We're talking about a lot. The experts say it could have been as many as 12 wise men. The Bible never says 3. The Bible just says there were 3 gifts. So we assume 3 gifts, 3 kings, 3 wise men, 3 Magi, but it could have been as many as 12. And they would have had perhaps as many as 1,000 people on the journey with them. And they would have taken a long time to prepare and a long time to get there. That's why most Bible experts tell us that actually they visited Jesus up to a year after he was born. That blows our mind a little bit, doesn't it? Because that doesn't fit the normal little nativity that we do. Out go the shepherds from that door, in come the wise men from that door. It's not how it worked. And just in case you're thinking, I'm not so sure about that, well, we go back to the original language. When the gospel writers tell us about this, and when Matthew tells us about this story, the shepherds visit, the word for Jesus there is a baby, a newborn baby. When the Magi visit, the word there is for a toddler, an infant, a little boy. So you see the gap between the two. So this is going to blow your mind. It almost certainly means then probably that these wise people didn't go to Bethlehem. They went to Nazareth. By then Jesus was back in Nazareth with his family. So some of our little traditions are getting blown up here. But what we know is this is an amazing, astonishing story. It's bigger, it's more spectacular, it's more earth-shattering than we ever thought. This was a big, big, big thing. People were used to going and have an audience with the Magi. If they were on the road visiting somebody else, well, this was significant. This was special. And they're on the road, why? Because they're searching for a king. Remember, these are the people who can, if you got the approval from them, you could continue to reign in your country. If you didn't get their approval, you could lose your kingship. And they were on the road trying to find a king. And we hear that Herod panics. Why? Because he's worried. These are significant, influential people. What the heck are they doing in Jerusalem? Even worse than that, why are they asking everybody where is this baby who's born King of the Jews? Again, the words there, it's like they're going from person to person around the whole city. Have you seen this new king? Have you seen this new king? So poor old Herod sitting in his palace, he's panicking. Is this the end of my reign? Am I done for? Not surprisingly, he starts getting worried and he starts getting jealous. And they're following a star. Not a set of LED lights in the roof of the hall, but a star. Now again, some experts have said perhaps it was a comet, perhaps it was a supernova. We can't be certain. There are a number of significant things that those who study the stars say happened around that time. But what we do know is God's involved. It's some supernatural event. Remember back in the Old Testament times when the Israelites are going through the desert and they follow a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of light by night. Remember in the Nativity story, the shepherds are visited by an angel. And the glory of God, it says, shone around them. Remember years later when Paul is on the road to Damascus and there is a blinding light. God often deals in light. And in this instance, he's leading these Magi to Jesus, the King. They follow the star. Herod wants them to go and tell him where this baby is. Why? So he can intercept him. He can defeat him. He can kill him. And his reign is okay. But they decide not to follow Herod's example. They keep following the star and they turn up and they encounter Jesus. And just to remind us how important this story is, Matthew uses that word idu again. Behold. This is magnificent. This is a wow moment. This is even more incredible than the last ever episode of Gavin and Stacey on Christmas Day. and miles better than Wallace and Gromit. This is astonishing. Sometimes people say the Bible exaggerates, the Bible goes over the top. I find actually the exact opposite. Most of the time, the Bible understates what's going on. The Bible just tells it matter-of-factly. And in this story here, blink and we miss the incredible, awesome spectacle of these powerful people coming with all their entourage, searching high and low for Jesus. And they finally encounter him. And then we get to the climax of the story, and I've called it worship and provision. There's a magnificent grand opening of gifts. Who at home on Christmas Day has a tradition of how they open their presents? Who does it before breakfast? Anybody? Early starters? Who does it after lunch? Later in the day? Hazel and Mike, what's your plan? How do you do it?
Several times a day.
Several times. So many presents, you have to do it in instalments.
Facing the turkey.
Okay. And is it all in, everybody for himself, or one at a time, and you have to see what everybody's got? Yes, very organised. Anybody else got a different way of doing it?
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve you do yours. Okay, Christmas Eve in the night. Okay. Interesting. Okay, anybody else? I seem to get later and later. I used to be, I'd get up as early as I could, get it all done with. We'd have a little Christmas stocking by our bedside still, and I rummaged through that early on. And this time we weren't doing presents till gone at the evening meal, so like 6 o'clock in the evening or something. But it's an exciting time, isn't it? Let's go back to the story. Our thinking is that 3 people turn up with 3 little boxes, like in the Nativity. Present 1, present 2, present 3. The reality is probably something far, far different. There would have been a magnificent grand opening of lots and lots of gifts coming in on camels, coming and carried by servants. There would have been stuff laid all over the place. And in the midst of all these grandiose gifts would have been gold, would have been frankincense, would have been myrrh. I was reading a study about this and said that if you wanted to give honour to even a low-grade king, I don't know how they graded kings, but a king of a small country, I guess, you would give him 1,360 pounds in weight of gold. That's quite a lot, isn't it? The more important the king, the more gold you gave him. You would give, again, even for a lower grade king, 1,000 jars of sweet smelling oil and perfume. Ladies, anybody get some perfume for Christmas? Okay, can't go far wrong. I bought my wife some perfume. I don't think I bought 1,000 jars of perfume in my lifetime. I don't know what 1,000 jars of perfume would look like. But you get some idea of the enormity of the occasion. Why does Matthew mention these 3 things? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. You probably know this. It's to point us to who this baby, this toddler is. Gold, because Jesus does come as a king. He might not look like a king, he might not have been born like a king, but he is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords. And so when gold's involved, it's saying this baby, this boy is royal. He's important, he's significant. He's a king. And we've come all this way, us important people, to give him these gifts because we think he is not just a king, but the wording suggests that they think he is the greatest king. Amen? Frankincense. Frankincense was used in the temple. It was used by the priests in their worship, in their intercession. You went to the temple and the priest interceded on your behalf to God, and they lit sweet-smelling incense and frankincense, and it was an aroma associated with worship, associated with prayer, associated with holiness. gives them another idea who Jesus is. This person who's going to intercede on our behalf. This person who's going to connect us to God in a way that we could never do ourselves. Gold, frankincense, and then myrrh. Myrrh was used variously as a substance to soothe suffering. If you were in pain, if you were in agony, myrrh would be used on your body. Myrrh would be given to you. It was also used as an embalming fluid for those bodies that were already dead. And so once we hear that myrrh is involved, we know that Jesus is going to be involved in sacrifice. He's going to be involved in suffering. He's going to be involved in death. And actually, if we fast forward 30 years or so, in the death and resurrection of Jesus, we see Joseph of Arimathea offering his tomb for Jesus and bringing spices and oils, including myrrh, to anoint the body. So these Magi, they turn up and they tell us who Jesus is. And Matthew has remembered the significance of those three gifts. God intervenes a couple of times in this story right at the end. One, he intervenes to say to the Magi, don't go back to Jerusalem, don't go back to Herod. He's after you. You go back home a different way. And so they take a detour and they go home. And the second thing is an angel appears and says to Joseph, Herod's on the lookout for killing all the firstborn children, so escape to Egypt. Now, Egypt was a very affluent, important, significant country. It would be difficult for somebody from Israel to go to Egypt and to live and to work. It would be very difficult to get a work permit. You'd need to take some money with you, some provision with you. Guess what Joseph and Mary aren't short of? They're not short of gold. They're not short of frankincense and myrrh. They're not short of important, valuable things. So those gifts don't just tell us who Jesus is. They provide for Mary and Joseph on that journey to live in Egypt for around about 3 years until Herod dies and they come back. And so wrapped up in that whole gift giving and that whole encounter is this idea of Jesus is worth our worship and God is our provider. And so we fast forward to today and we believe in the significance, don't we, of all I've just said. That Jesus is worth our worship and God is our provider. And at Christmas time, we remember that God has provided for us through Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. And we remember the gold, the frankincense and the myrrh that points in so many ways to that Easter story of the sacrifice of Jesus. And so we finish our service this morning with an act of communion. Why? Because that's why God is worth our worship. That's how God has provided for you and for me. That's our greatest gift this Christmas. God's provision of a Saviour. To do for you and me what we couldn't do for ourselves. That the King came to intercede for us and to sacrifice himself to suffer in our place so that we might know the God who sent him and the God who made us in the first place. A magnificent, astonishing, amazing story. Searching for a king. I hope you found Jesus this morning and you know that he is your king. And I hope you worship him. And I hope you are dependent on the provision that only God can give.